Back, it's now time for us to review the week that was, and in case you're joining us now, welcome, and a quick reminder of who we have in studio. We have David Osiani, Nerima Wako, Mark Bichachi, and Philip Magal to review the week that has been. Let's start off with you, Philip. The judiciary is a matter of concern for many. We do know that the budget was cut by half last year. It was, I think, cut by a third this year. Then now we have the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission, recommending 41 judges, and the list has been rejected by the president. Reason that is given is that he has concerns regarding the integrity of some of these judges. What's your take on that from a lawyer's point of view?
Of course, we have to look at this from the grand scheme of things, and to most, this is a case of revisiting the judiciary. And the question we ask is, to what end? You know, it's Wanjiku who will suffer at the end of the day. It's not Maraga.
But isn't he just doing his job as president if he has concerns regarding some of those people to ensure? Because one of the things that he says it would be irresponsible of him to allow that list when he has reservations about some of those people.
I think that is a pretext to just frustrate the judiciary. Where was he when judiciary, I mean the JSC was considering the appointment of these people? It is at that stage that NSIS should have come in, and any other person with any petition against any of the individuals should have presented it, because it's JSC which is mandated to appoint and fire these persons. It's not the president. The president is only there to gazette or to swear them in, which is purely a ceremonial aspect of the appointment bit. Otherwise, he doesn't have any substantive role in the appointment of these people. And does he mean to tell us that all the 41 are tainted? If there are some that are not tainted, why not then proceed with those? This comes straight at the back of heavy budgetary cuts against the judiciary. Remember, the judiciary is not only understaffed, but it's still using archaic methods in recording proceedings, and that is what has occasioned so much delay. It has been trying to computerize its operations. Now that has been put back. It has been trying to reach through the use of mobile courts to the farthest corners of this country. Now that has had to be withdrawn. The tribunals, which play a key role in the administration of administrative justice, now have been grounded. There are so many people who will suffer as a consequence. And what I would urge the president is, you know, to me this is purely personal vendetta against the judiciary.
Against the judiciary.
And it is a high time he looked at this objectively and consider the fact that it's not Maraga who will suffer at the end of the day. It is Wanjiku out there who will suffer irreparable consequences.
All right, Nerima, the president has a right. The reason why he has to sign and approve is because it stops at his desk. The back does stop with him. As much as, Philip says it's ceremonial, he has a responsibility. Do you feel that this is possibly also a revisiting of the judiciary as was promised at some point?
I don't feel so. I think that the president does have a right, and it's interesting that there are integrity issues being brought up with the judges. I do feel that there are people who work with the president currently, which also we should be investigating their integrity, including cabinet secretaries. So it makes me question why the focus on the judiciary only. And I think that we do understand that judiciary is underfunded, as Philip has said, but also the fact that we want and strive for an independent judiciary, but it's difficult for them to be independent if the same government is the one that channels funding toward them. So it seems that there's a bit of bullying in terms of who has the greater power, because our constitution is the supreme law, and so we should feel protected by that law. But when you see the executive arm also taking a stringent arm on only the judiciary, it makes you question as to why.
All right, David Osiani, one of the things that makes this directed by the president also suspicious in a way is the fact that the Attorney General sits in the Judicial Service Commission. So one would expect that by the time this list is getting to the president, he has done his due diligence, and if there is any questionable character, then it should not even have reached the president. For it to get to the president, there are either two things. Either, like the two panelists have said, there is an attack on the judiciary, or somebody has slept on his job.
The president has people to fire, starting from NIS all the way to people who did not do their job at the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. If these are issues that, if there are fundamental issues around these judges, it should not be wished away. However, this is not the time to deal with it. It should have been dealt with preliminarily. There are structures for them to deal with those. Of course, once the people were shortlisted, there should have been a report, an intelligence report on every of the shortlisted candidates before their vetting. That did not happen. Is not the president to blame, so he shouldn't do the job for those who did not do the job. Now, it will become, the reason why sometimes it would look like there is an attack on the judiciary is because there was a crisis with Warsame the other time. It was protracted, it took so long to have Warsame, sworn in. And people had different things to say. The president had his view, which I duly respect. Is there a problem when our judicial officers have issues that could even be criminal? Yes, there is. We should not wish that away. Have we had questions, about the judiciary and some of its officers? Not all, certainly. There are some who are rotten to the core. And the sad thing is that one rotten egg spoils the entire broth sometimes. It spoils the image of the judiciary. There have been issues around how files disappear, how some judicial officers are corrupt. But let's not forget that a majority of the judicial officers are doing a tremendously good job. So yes, if there are issues with some of them, the president should have just outed them and said, I'm going to swear in 35. There are pending issues on these 6. I request the JSC to reconsider their stand on these 6 or these 4. Because truly, it cannot be that the 41 of them, that's why someone would look at it and say, okay, this is being sinister. The budget of the judiciary was cut down by half. The judiciary employs almost 7,000 people across the country. Parliament's budget, Parliament's budget is almost 8 times that of the judiciary. Parliament. Parliamentary Service Commission against Judicial Service Commission, their budgets are ridiculously variant. So I understand, and in fact, to an extent, I agree with the president that if a judicial officer, because that's the citadel of correctness, that is the home of justice. That's where we go to when the police have arrested you unfairly. That is where you want to go to. You don't want to end up with a judicial officer who will side with the OCS so that they make money off you. You had no traffic offense, but because they work in cahoots, then they end up with the usual Kenyan problem. However, it is my considered opinion that the president should swear in those that he deems are above reproach and ask the JSC to make reconsiderations. And while at that, please ensure you revisit every sector of the public service. There are ministers who have been inept, corrupt. There are PSs like Muraguri who had issues in the Ministry of Health. You transferred him to Ministry of Lands. Revisit. Show that what you want in the judiciary is what you want in every corner of the service.
Mark Bichachi.
First, the person who's called a judge, when a Kenyan hears judge, magistrate, do we feel the sense of my case is safe? Do I feel like I will get justice? That's the preliminary question. That we've got to address the issue that when a Kenyan tells you, I'll take you to court, and you're innocent, you do not feel vindicated. When a Kenyan tells you, I'll take you to court, you do not feel like you will receive justice in time. These are the issues that we need to address. So it's not just a matter of addressing the 40 odd judges that we are talking about putting into office. We need to address the whole idea of what the judiciary stands for in this country. It should not be a matter of, oh my goodness, we've been taken to court, it will take years. That's not what Kenyans should feel. You understand? Kenyans should not be checking and seeing, oh my goodness, is that judge corrupt? What are his stories? Or let's take this case to the judge where the files disappear. Let's take this case to the judge. That should not be the case. And beyond budgets, beyond everything, the most critical thing we must address is the judiciary trustworthy to the Kenyan people? That's the most important thing. The second thing that we must address is this thing in Kenya called budgeting. I'll tell you why the MP's budget is higher than the judiciary. Because the MPs are the ones who pass the budget. And the caveat they give to the treasury to pass the budget is not give us a good budget to pass. They ask first, what is in it for us? And then they will ignore every other thing and simply focus on their own benefits, their own whatever. But in this three-tier government, you notice that the executive, which is an arm of government, has direct input on the budget. Parliament equally has direct input on the budget. The judiciary is left to hope that the executive and parliament will be magnanimous enough to give them enough budget. And that's a ridiculous thing. And that's why...
That's why we need a referendum.
Yes, if you're going to have referendum questions...
It's one of the referendum questions.
Yes, if you're going to have a key referendum, forget about prime ministers, all those things you bandy around. You need to look at the judiciary and do what other countries have done. Decide and say, you know what, we'll give 2-3% of our budget to the judiciary so that the judiciary has financial independence. And this is very, very critical. The judiciary needs financial independence so that we can independently hold them accountable for what we want. Because now, if you go to court, a judge will say he can only listen to 2-3 cases in a day, and truthfully so, because the guy has to sit there and write by hand everything that you are saying, right? And still have enough energy left over at night, I don't know when they do this, to go back through his notes and say, oh, okay, wait. So he said this here, and then justice is this. Then we also, as a country, need to visit the issue of what does justice mean to us.
Okay, and I guess we cannot ignore the fact that the executive would, in a way, want to have a very major hand on the judiciary. So how we fix that, I guess, is what now Osiani is referring to as the referendum question. Philip, do you think that's something that can be fixed at that level?
If we are genuine about amending our constitution, if there is one issue that we need to address is the independence of the judiciary. And right now, one of the things that is hampering judiciary in the discharge of its remit is lack of financial independence. This financial year, the judiciary received 0.4% of the budgetary allocation. So you can imagine how much they have to strain in order to deliver justice. And compare the three arms of government, the legislature, judiciary, and the executive. Which has performed of the three? I mean, it's clear to every Kenyan, as much as judiciary has...
It depends on the performance. If it is a comedy, Parliament has done well. If it's a joke, Parliament has done well. Very well.
The same with the executive. We can see the amount of money the executive has lost through corruption and wastage.
And that brings in the other aspect that maybe we should look at, because when we are talking about the BBI report that we're waiting for now, that should be released anytime now, the concentration has been on an expanded executive. There's little being said about the judiciary. There's little being said about how corruption is going to be fought. Nerima, do you think we are ready as a country, and I'm not talking about the politicians in this case, but the citizenry, in terms of our knowledge and scope of what the referendum is all about and what is important to us?
I don't think that we are. A lot of times we listen to what politicians say and then we take it as truth. And that's also with our constitution, which is almost 10 years old, but most are not aware of what it entails or what's within it. But it's also systemically done. So that way it's easy to persuade the masses, it's easy to control a mass that is ignorant. But I do believe that as much as devolution is working, there are challenges within devolution, and Wachira Maina always talks about the Senate and the fact that Senate is directly elected and them not having a budget per se, what does that mean? So there are a bit of loopholes. That's just one of the issues. And we've also seen Uhuru Court going back to do Punguza Mizigo 2 with Punguza Mizigo Kenya. So a lot of times I believe that the BBI task force held off on releasing the report because they feel that the Kenyan people are not ready to receive that information now.
Are they not ready to receive it because we are not ready in terms of information, or not ready because they already have a preconceived report that they would like to present?
The narrative, what are they going to share as the narrative? Because even right now, people are going through a lot of challenges. We've seen so many job cuts. We've seen last week, people were so angry about appointments. I mean, the atmosphere, it would be down to release something on an issue that doesn't affect the Kenyan directly, when over the last few days they've been talking about issues that are affecting them directly. It would be down.
All right. David Osiani, your thoughts on whether Kenyans were prepared. Do we, and I don't want to sound like we disregard or make Kenyans feel like they don't understand what are the issues. They do. But the question is, are we prepared enough to actually even go for a referendum? Do we know where to start?
Before I come to the referendum question, I would like to admonish that the president has a sit down with Maraga, just the two of them, to iron out this thing that seems like a debacle. Because the truth is, you can't frustrate the judiciary. The judiciary can frustrate the executive. The executive can try to frustrate the judiciary like they have done, but if they were to go mano a mano, the person that will lose is the executive. You will be frustrated because every judicial officer will just pick Q and say, okay, sasa hii ni vita. And you know, if Maraga were a madman and today he decides that we will not take cases from government, the cells will be full. There is no magistrate to listen to your DPP. And then you go there, they say, no, you go listen to yourselves in your own courts. It will be messy. There is a need to sit down and chart a way forward, to climb down from, you know, those hard stance points. But that said, Kenyans understand what this country needs. I think Kenyans have an understanding. It may not be that sophisticated understanding of, you know, what the Constitution is about or what needs to change about it. But Kenyans have a pretty much good understanding holistically of where we need to go and where we are. They appreciate it. I agree with Nerima to an extent that there's been a lot of anger lately. The young people are angry. The appointments are not reflective of, you know, the desire to get young people into positions of decision making in the policy tables. There seems to be an economic depression, which is something going on globally. It's not unique to our country, because everyone feels it. You know, you recently saw people, the small-scale traders, when they said our containers are stuck at ICD, and you know, that anger, it's palpable. You can almost feel it, that it takes our eyes sometimes off the few good things that have been going on. So no one has time for them. You can't even articulate them against that anger. But do I think that the referendum is a good thing? It is, and it must be seen as greater beyond providing political space for a few, which has been bandied around. There has to be so much more. I will not speak about the report until I read it, so I await its launch. When it is launched, call us here to interrogate
the actual report,
Okay.
and
whether it is something worthy of our consideration.
All right, I want us to look at something else very briefly, very, very briefly. You had already given you a chance to do that, right? You know, you talk a lot until I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. It becomes
You
difficult
went
to
there.
tell. But you know that yourself. Anyway, carry on.
No, the issue is this, that number one, that Kenya as a country, we are a very negative people. And there's never a good time really to talk to Kenyans about national issues. We always in a bad mood because we are always angry at something. In fact, today we could be angry that a Kikuyu has been appointed to Safaricom PLC. And that's a problem, that we have this nature of being consistently angry. But that does not insulate our leadership from the real responsibility of leading this country. And leading this country is, we must go back, and this is one of the things that we must remember. BBI was not about creating positions. BBI was about addressing the national ethos. There was a 9-point agenda, but if there's one agenda that was critical, is addressing the national ethos. What is it that is, what do we mean when we say a Kenyan? When you leave your phone next to a Kenyan, is it safe? That's what we need to address. You understand? That's do you get what I mean? And that's the biggest issue. Forget everything else we discuss. Can you trust a Kenyan with your phone for 5 minutes when you need to go to the bathroom, or when you forgot it in an office and you walk back? Can you find your phone? And if there is a constitutional referendum, if there is a BBI report, if there is anything our leaders need to address, is what is the ethics of what a Kenyan is.
Talking about ethics, I want us to look at a story that was also...
Did I keep it short?
Yes, you kept it very short. Congratulations. Maybe we should clap for you. But there you go. Page 9 of the Standard today has a story which MPs to Amina, you don't care for our sports stars. Now, we've hardly forgotten what Eliud Kipchoge did for this country and how we came together. And you're saying that we're always angry. Maybe this is why we're always angry. We all came together and we're very happy with Eliud Kipchoge's performance. 159, put us on the globe. But before we've even forgotten that, we had athletes who got stuck in South Africa. Why? Because their accommodation was not taken care of. Please note, they had gone to represent Kenya. They had not gone there on safari or, for a business transaction or something. They had gone to represent the country. But unfortunately, it seems like there was no arrangement whatsoever from the Kenyan government to ensure that our athletes were there and well taken care of. Philip Magal, should we possibly be looking at Madam Amina maybe, just stepping aside and giving that docket to somebody else? Or is it a bigger problem?
It is a mixture of both. But let me start by just, there are contradicting informations coming out of from the team as to whether they were properly accommodated or not. If indeed, if at all it is true that they received the kind of treatment that is being peddled around social media, then that in itself is a reason enough for the minister to step aside. If it is not the truth, again, it doesn't really absolve her of much blame, because we've seen over and over our sportsmen and women being mistreated over time. Remember, there was a team of the physically challenged individuals who were sponsored by Sonko instead of national government when they had to represent the country somewhere the other day. And it's been, it's been the story with all the federations. I saw the federations actually appealed to the Parliamentary Sports Committee saying that they are not being funded. Yet the president had issued a directive that they should be funded. As to the competence and capabilities of this particular minister, of course, they have always been at issue. Remember when she was in education docket, and she would issue a directive in the morning, and in the evening she would do a complete turnaround. So therefore, like my colleague here, David, had said earlier on, the president should stop pretending that there are issues of integrity to do with the judiciary.
Only. And
face his cabinet, which to me should be his starting point. There are people there that were appointed on basis of political expediency. There are people in that cabinet who are appointed purely on tribal and nepotic considerations. There are people who fail to deliver. There are people who are corrupt. And that should be his starting point, if at all he wants to make this country work.
All right, Nerima, your thoughts on what's happening in the sports sector. And this is not the first time. Remember, we had our athletes go for Olympics. And very basic necessities. I think it's what Bichachi is referring to. If you leave your phone, there are, clothes, basic, what do you call it, attire for sports was missing. Why? Because it was found in some of the organizers' houses. I mean, it's completely unacceptable that in this day and age, the very people that are putting Kenya on the world map and doing it from their very sweat are the same people that we cannot take care of as a country.
Yes, I agree, and I think it's unfortunate. And also, reading the article that's in the Standard, I find it interesting how CS Amina talks about how she's saying the information is contradicting to what her team was able to do, the committee, in terms of getting the tickets on time, but also to question what the sports fund does then. I feel that there is some inconsistencies, yes, in the narratives, and I also think that we can't forget how CS Amina was also attacked when she was in the education ministry, and she had said CBC was not ready, and CBC was not ready. And so she was slaughtered for that and actually pushed aside and moved into the sports fund. And so for your previous question as to whether she should step aside, I do not think so. Not at the moment. I don't think there's enough proof to this case at the moment.
Are you happy, satisfied with her performance so far in that docket?
I think that she's working differently compared to who was there before.
Well, and sometimes if you compare with the worst, then definitely she's serious.
But it is an abuse to compare anything to what was there before. I'm sorry, what was there before?
You know, Mike,
I don't mention names, but
let me say this. When Kipchoge won the Ineos under 2 hours contest, it wasn't a contest really. The deputy president showed up with a litany of government officials. They were bashed a good one. Why? They were told, where are the stadia that you promised us? This guy has had to go and do all this getting ready in the thickets on his own because you haven't even availed facilities for him to be able to get ready to become a world champion. All right? Now, we do not have those facilities to date. Yet, even after our sportsmen and women have gone to rehearse, to get ready for contests regionally and globally, you do not facilitate them. How much anger do you want to attract from the young people? So you appoint people to decision-making tables and policy-making tables. They are not there. You were saying you want to fight radicalization of our young people. You don't give them options to keep them busy from drugs and getting radicalized and, getting into this madness. Isn't it incumbent on her to seek solutions? I mean, for this case, I will hold it that Amina may not be the one to crucify, but what steps has she taken? Just like Kenya Ferry Services. I remember saying the board should have fired the CEO. If they did not, then it was right that they were fired. Amina Mohammed should have gone down to find out what really happened. I expected to have read a response from the ministry on this issue before they were summoned by the committee in Parliament. I expected that her communication department should have communicated what is their version of the truth, which they haven't done. I expected that she should have questioned the PS to give and ensure that there are matching orders for anyone who is found culpable for embezzling funds or sleeping on the job such that these funds were not ready. I play karate. The national karate team has, I tell you, they suffer to even go for contests. Never mind, it's the best in the region. All right? So, and this goes for all the other sports that are played by different people. Now, if you're not going to give real solutions for our young people to become the best in their thing, to get them occupied, to ensure that they can eke a living out of sports and all these other things that are associated with them, then you have failed them. There needs to be a much more innovative thought around the Ministry of Youth. You need to be the ones saying, working together with the Ministry of Agriculture, proposing how to involve our young people in the agricultural sector, how to make it attractive for them. The youth ministry is not just about all these other sideshows that we see. So is Amina culpable for this netball menace? No, she is. But has she performed better in that ministry? Sadly, I do not hold that opinion.
Do not hold that thought. Bichachi, as we wind up on that.
You know, one of the things that we like to forget in this country is we like to forget what is the main thing. The main thing is, yes, Amina is tasked with a ministry called Sports, Culture, and Heritage. And I'll tell you what pitfalls lie therein. That number one, this week we've got a festival in Dar es Salaam celebrating East African diversity, and it's the first thing on their website. We've heard nothing about it. Musicians who form a huge part of cultural ambassadors in this country complained when their M-Pesas rang and MCSK had sent them a message of 2,300 shillings. What was done? If today you were told that, listen, today in the evening we are going to have a Kenyan-themed party, what would you wear? In fact, what food would you expect to eat?
Ugali.
These are the questions that we've tasked CS Amina with. We've tasked her with the question that when the IAAF said and confirmed to the world that when it comes to athletics, Kenya is a force to be reckoned with. Yes, we gave Kipchoge the highest award. But what award do you get for beating the rest of the world? What system is there to preserve the memory of our heroes? Which young people listening to me today know who Piogama Pinto is? Or why Agwinskodek is called Agwinskodek Road? Right? These are the cultural things that she needs to address. So if we are to be focused, we can clearly tell that that docket within our government has not been addressed. We need to understand and call it for what it is. So what are we saying? I'm not calling for CS Amina to resign because I have learned it's not just a matter of replacing people. This is what I'm calling on her to do. Let her be creative. Let her be creative and begin to ask the question that perhaps can the netball team be funded because Kenyans are attending netball matches in Kenya? The truth is there are only 2-3 events of sports that get a crowd. Rugby sevens.
Football.
Not football. Gor Mahia and the FC Leopards. Right? Don't say football. It's Gor Mahia and the FC. Right? And that's it. Listen, sports is not sponsored by Sport Kenya and is not sponsored by the government. The reason why you must address culture is this. Today is a Friday. Everyone is asking you, guy, where we do die? Because there are no theaters to go to.
Yes, and
because there are no matches to go to.
Absolutely.
But because that ministry has not diversified.
Mark, the government, let's give them credit. They have come up with a directive where all civil servants
every
must
Friday
wear
Kenya, which is the Brand Kenya initiative, and we must thank Brand Kenya for that.
And now
very clear.
You're blowing the trumpet from Brand Kenya, which you're part of. How do we even know how do we even know what is Kenyan wear?
Kenya.
What is Kenyan wear?
That's the thing. That's why we have the Make It in Kenya mark, which is being rolled out. So when you go even to the supermarkets, and I'll give you an example of Carrefour, they've clearly marked out using the Brand KE logo, they've clearly marked out which are the Kenyan products. And these are things that are happening and should continue to happen. On the cultural side, we need to understand one thing that is very, very critical. South Korea invested a small percentage of its GDP in its musicians, just 1%. This was in the 90s. K-pop today, which is South Korean music today, is competing with the United States dollar for dollar for how much money they're raking in. So this is what we are telling that ministry.
But
if you invest in the arts.
I need us to agree here that it is unfair to judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. All right? I do not think that the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage is the place for Amina. And so because she's not a natural fit in it, She is extremely competent in other things, but that's not her forte. And so we need to appreciate that Amina needs to, I mean, the much she has done, we are grateful for, and I am glad. But she probably needs to be one of our greatest, ambassadors out there trying to argue our case in Geneva, where we took Dr. Mailu, who is a doctor. We left a diplomat, took a medical doctor who has no background in diplomacy to those roles, or probably send Amina to a place like AU. Let us let the fish stay in the water and monkeys on the tree. Let everyone find out where their talent is. And this mismatch is why we call upon the president, look for people who have the ability to deliver for you. Because time is running out fast, and the president has a legacy to leave.
All right, let's finish off with one more story that was of concern, and talking about the president and the legacy is the highway, the JKIA Westlands Highway, which apparently might have a piece of Uhuru Park, which again becomes a matter of concern. In fact, there's an article in the Standard today, JKIA Westlands Expressway will be for the rich, finance expert says. And the reason why he says that is because who are likely to use that highway? It's likely to just be the affluent. What do you do with the people from Kayole, people from the other places? But that's an argument.
I want to listen to Philip.
I'm conflicted on this issue, but I would say that we underestimate the people in Kayole and the people in Kibra. I mean, using a border from point A to B in Nairobi doesn't cost you less than 100 bob. And that is the much that will be charged for using the Nairobi Expressway. If you go to London, there's the Heathrow Express. You can choose to use it, or you can choose to use the overground, which will take you much more time. For me, I would support any infrastructural investment. I wouldn't mind if a road cut across my house, as long as I wouldn't mind if it leads to nowhere.
Although Uhuru Park is one that we have fought to keep.
And that is where the conflict.
Need open space.
Heritage.
And that is where I'm a bit conflicted, because I know whatever I say, I'll be bashed by Kenyans out there. But then what is really the value of Uhuru Park? It's 13 acres, isn't it? I'm sure there are many people out there who own more than 13 acres. And, what, in terms of environmental impact in this city, what does it have? Can you equate it to Mau? There are some people, almost half of this country doesn't support the Mau evictions, yet they support the retention of Uhuru Park. And remember, it's not the whole of, it's not like this thing will pass right through Uhuru Park. We are told that only 1.3 acres will be annexed, will be exercised. Number two, that even then there would be seats and there would be landscaping that will be done to accommodate it. We are told that...
Unfortunately, in Kenya, what we are told and what happens are two different things. So
they are two different things. But if I may...
So they may say it will only take an acre, but we are not too sure about that. But the truth of the matter is, if they take an inch, what stops them from taking a mile? We'll start with an inch today, tomorrow we'll have a mile. So
but can you just weigh that against the carbon emissions by the jam that is constantly on Uhuru Highway each and every hour of the day in this in this
David,
city?
the question here might be, he makes a valid point, but the question also might be, is that the only alternative?
No. He doesn't make a valid point. Don't even say he makes a valid point. Because when we are going to talk carbon emissions, does building the highway stop the cars from running on it? We are only making it easy, and many more cars now will go over it. Cars that would have been at home because there's traffic below will now be on top, and you think that then the carbon will rise up and not come down? Listen to me.
I attribute the high volume of carbon emission to the jam.
Well, if you solve jam, it is true. If you solve jam, there is less.
What is the cumulative? What will be the cumulative impact of solving? Now we will have mobility. Wait a minute.
More fuel.
Wait a minute. What is going to be the cumulative effect of 1,000 cars were jammed on the road, causing a high carbon emission, but now we have 3,000 cars moving fast on that road? What have you sorted out, you guys? I speak authoritatively as the UNEP's young environmental envoy. Okay? So now, on this matter, I want to request that we reconsider which part that road will go through. Just leave Uhuru Park, even for heritage's sake. Spare it. Do not validate and say if you cut one tree for the sake of easing traffic, it's okay. For a country that has proven that we cannot plant trees. It would make sense to me if we had a national program, tree planting program, that has been in place where the CS Magoha compels every school to plant 1,000 trees by the end of every term. And those trees are available for them to plant. That would make sense to me. Then we would start arguing and saying, okay, looking at the efforts we have made in the past, it could be sensible to do A, B, C, and D. But for a country that has not demonstrated the capability to replenish or replace trees that have been cut, to cut more is an abuse. So yes, I appreciate that overpass is much needed, it's good for us, but it will not cumulatively sort out, carbon emissions problem. Many more cars will be on the road that would have stayed at home. And that's why I thought we would think of a monorail. What happened to them?
All right. Nerima?
I agree with David. Leave the park.
Leave the park alone.
Leave the park alone.
I am firmly with Magal, and I'll tell you why. But number one, I've looked at the map, okay, of what we are losing. First, there is an incredible amount of that land that was highway leeway anyway. Let's be there.
So is Serena. Okay.
Listen, let me finish my statement because I'm not defending Serena.
Serena is greener than Uhuru.
We need to wind up.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
It is much greener than Uhuru.
A lot of that space we are talking about is on the Luna Park side, the Kenya Railways Club side. Okay?
Okay.
The smallest part is what we are discussing on Uhuru Highway. Now, not on Uhuru, in Uhuru Park. The percentage of the park that is essentially not being hived off per se. It may be a problematic because of how the road curves into the thing, but I do not see it becoming as detrimental to Uhuru Park as we want to imagine it to be. I do not see that now there used to be 800 families at Uhuru Park on Sunday, now there'll be 200. I do not see that happening. Number two, I do not see what we are going to lose in terms of when you're talking about trees. Have you seen how the Mau looks like a kipara? We have forest on the sides and there's nothing in the middle.
How did Mau start?
Therefore, let me put this. Kenyans need to stop being pretentious. If we care about nature, let's be consistent. And let's say that let's reclaim the Mau, let's stop the nonsense that's going on in Kakamega Forest, and let's also deal with all of these parts that we're talking about. Let's be consistent.
Good.
The problem I have with Kenya is the pretentiousness. Okay. We want to pretend that we care when all we really want, and this is my problem with a lot of the naysayers, not all of them. A lot of the naysayers just want to stick a finger up the nose of the government just because they can. Because this road is a good idea.
All right, consistency is where we're going to leave it.
The road is a brilliant idea, Mike. The road is a brilliant idea. I concur, but I have been here long enough to know that Mau did not start on its own. Yeah. It started with a miles encroachment, and there hasn't been an assurance that that will not happen to Uhuru Park. There wasn't an assurance that that would happen with the national park, and I dare tell you, look for me 5 years from now, if that road is to be built, that you will find people will have encroached right below that road. People will have built offices for themselves and all sorts of things.
David Osiani, thank you very much. Philip Magal, thank you very much. Nerima Wako, Mark Bichachi. We have to wind up right there. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Is Uhuru Park really a green space?
We have to wind up. Is it really a green space? We'll leave that to be answered next week. It is.